Welcome to the Beau Show. I went to Tampa, Florida for Turning Point USA's Student Action Summit. Turning Point USA is a 501c3 founded in 2012 by Charlie Kirk. The organization's mission is to identify, educate, train, and organize students to promote the principles of freedom, free markets, and limited government. Turning Point USA believes that every young person can be enlightened to true free market values. They have a presence on over 2,500 college campuses. At this Student Action Summit, attendees heard from a number of speakers such as Ted Cruz, Mike Pompeo, Donald Trump Jr., Ron DeSantis, and many others about what actions they can take on campuses throughout America, particularly as the rudiments of wokeism and socialism take root on these campuses. This episode is a compilation of interviews I conducted with speakers and attendees. First up was former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, a very beloved figure in the Trump administration. I wanted to ask him about how the Biden foreign policies have diverged from his policies and positions, especially regarding the persecution of millions who practice Falun Gong, a religious practice rooted in Buddhism. We know that China has been persecuting and torturing those who practice religious faith in China. So I wanted the Secretary's take on what America should be doing with respect to China, Iran, and Cuba. I'm joined by former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here on NTD News.
Great to be with you.
Mr. Secretary, you have a unique perspective on China, and especially on the persecution of Falun Gong there, many of whom are right here around me. I'd like to know if you feel the Biden administration is pursuing the proper course or what you would do differently.
No, not remotely. Indeed, I've heard that as I've been walking around here today. People from Hong Kong, people from other parts of China who are thankful for what the Trump administration did and are frightened by what the Biden administration is not doing. We had the right approach. We were the first administration in decades who challenged the central thesis of the Chinese Communist Party and its tyranny and authoritarianism. And with respect to the Falun Gong, the absence of religious freedom in China is horrific. It is tragic. It's gone on for too long, and America needs to lead the world to ensure that those people have the opportunity to practice their faith in the way they want to.
Yes, sir. My final question to you. We see places like Iran and especially Cuba right now so poised for regime change and a cry for democracy. Which of these countries do you think is most likely to achieve it first, and what should the U.S. be doing to aid them?
Boy, I never know timelines. It's always so hard to know. But the people in each of the two places that you identified are just simply yearning for that basic freedom, the ability to practice their faith, to take care of their families. They want some opportunity for economic improvement as well. But this is about freedom. The United States has a deep role in protecting their humanitarian rights and helping and supporting them as they make their journey towards freedom. We know what these regimes do. They crack down, they've got the guns, they've got the weapons. We understand that. These are brave people. They're willing to risk an awful lot. The least the United States can do is to use the tools that we have available to provide support, at the very least moral support, for the efforts they're engaged in.
That's the American way. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate you,
It's
sir.
nice to
Thank
meet
you.
you.
I also interviewed Senator Rick Scott of Florida, who was also a previous governor of Florida. As we know, Florida has been at the forefront of activity and leading policy with respect to big tech, election laws, and even aiding Cuba. Here's my sit-down with Senator Scott. My guest today is Senator Rick Scott, former Governor Rick Scott. Senator, thank you so much for being with us today.
Glad you're in Florida.
Yes, absolutely. The beautiful state of Florida. Senator, what is your message to young conservatives at this Turning Point USA Summit?
Get involved. You can make a difference. Whether it's running for office, whether it's helping people run for office, we've got to change the direction of this country. We've got to win one more back seat in the Senate. They can make a difference. They can win these elections. I always tell people when they're running, how many votes do you need? And if you think about it, if you have 10 people working with you and you're focused every day on how you get more votes, you're going to win an election. And the young people can do it.
And here we are at TP USA, and that's exactly what's happening. Senator, let's talk Cuba right now in the ongoing situation. What's the best thing we can do for them right now?
Right now, we need to do three things. Number one, we need to have a president that shows up. Donde está Joe?
Yeah.
Where is he? He needs to show up. He needs to call the Cuban dictatorship out for what it is. He needs to call all of his buddies in Europe and say it's time to show up and do something about this. Call them out for what they are. That's one. Number two, we've got to figure out how to get the internet back on down there so these people can share information. And number three, call them out. Call them out for some of the people. Ladies in white. I mean, these are just wonderful people. Women that protest after church and just walk. They're arrested. We don't know where they are. You go some distance, like Jose Daniel Ferrer. He and his 18-year-old son have just disappeared. What happened? Why are they show the pictures of the peaceful protesters that are being arrested? Peaceful protesters are being beat up. We got all of us get that information out. If we do, the world's going to show up, and eventually we're going to get freedom down there. Those 3 things we got to get done now.
Okay, and Senator, my final question to you is: you've been governor and senator now. Which role do you prefer, and what challenges do you face now as a senator you didn't have as a governor?
Well, they're both great jobs. I liked what I did as a governor. I liked the fact that we had 1.7 million jobs. We became #1 higher education, probably top 5 in K-12 education. 47-year low in our crime rate. I love that. These are great national issues. I'm on armed services. I'm dealing with foreign policy, dealing with federal tax policy, regulatory policy. It's a ball. I mean, it's a great job. You just got to work every day.
Well, Senator, thanks so much, and also thank you for being a fan of the Epoch Times and subscribing to us. We really appreciate that.
Yeah,
thank
you guys
do
a great job.
Thank you for your time today. Appreciate it, sir.
See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Next, I interviewed the founder of Project Veritas, James O'Keefe. You probably know him because he has been conducting a number of undercover sting operations within CNN, Acorn, Planned Parenthood, Facebook, Google, and many other liberal media. James is 7-0 in his legal fights with those who have tried to come after him, and he's winning defamation cases against big tech. After I interviewed James, I interviewed 2 of his whistleblowers. Zach Voorhees blew the whistle on Google after he learned about machine-based learning that filtered out fake news, thereby interfering in the election. At the Turning Point Summit, O'Keefe unveiled a brand new whistleblower named David Johnson, an engineer at the children's toy company Hasbro, who noticed that the company was getting involved in critical race theory. Have a listen to these 3 interviews. My guest is James O'Keefe of Project Veritas. James, thanks so much for being with me.
Great to be with you.
Press badge on, absolutely. James, you've been at the forefront of this undercover style of work for a while. What is it that made you initially interested in this type of expose journalism?
I think the only way to get the truth out of people is by doing it, because people are going to be more honest in private, and journalism, you have a choice to make, and unfortunately, it's the best available option. It's the least worst option. People telling the truth are more likely to do so when they don't know they're being videotaped. So it's important to get the truth out to the public, and this is the best way to do it.
Just a few hours ago here at TPUSA, you brought forth a brand new whistleblower. What can you tell me about him?
His name is David Johnson. He works for Hasbro Toy Company. He's a packaging engineer, and he unearthed documents in the training talking about critical race theory with 2-year-old kids and 6-month-old kids. This is what the company Hasbro does with children. So he's here today, and he went on stage, and he came out today, and he's currently employed, and he's a whistleblower inside Hasbro. He brought out the curriculum that they were using for critical race theory, and he's published those videos on Zoom calls. He may be fired tomorrow. We don't know yet, but he's here. He's an inspirational whistleblower who's a courageous guy, and this is part of the Be Brave, Do Something campaign at Project Veritas.
I love it. NTD's sister media, the Epoch Times, which you know what that is, stands on 2 pillars, truth and tradition. And I think that's why people seem to be craving that today, simple honesty. What is your opinion of major media today? Is it complete propaganda?
I think most of it is. I think they've become part of an industrial system of production, this news media, which manufactures consent. It's not about journalism or truth-telling. It's just about, coordinating with the powers that be to suppress the truth. It's become the opposite of journalism. So it's up to people, the citizens, to do the job, to educate people.
This summit, James, is called the Student Action Summit. And in your speech, one thing that I thought was compelling is you said, you are the journalist. Explain what you mean by that and what someone, young or old, can do if they're the journalist.
Well, it depends upon
to risk their career.
It depends upon the people. It depends upon people out there. We can't rely upon our news media to do real journalism. Journalism today, the New York Times and the CNN have effectively become mouthpieces. They use hyperbole. They wordsmith the articles. They paint this portrait that isn't the way the reality is. And Project Veritas, Cinema Verite, operates at 24 frames per second. We just record them, and by recording the reality, it's opposite of what we're presented. And in doing that, we have to fight legal battles because they've sued us. We've won every lawsuit.
7-0, right?
Yep, we sue them now because it's about the discovery process of a libel lawsuit, which is what we're doing. And it's hard, but it's important that people stand up, and it's important that people like David stand up, and they are, and we're going to create thousands more.
Speaking of hyperbole, Donald Trump, when he used to say the press was the enemy of the people, I thought he was speaking in hyperbole originally. Do you agree with that? Do you think it's become that bad?
I think their behavior, their actions are like the enemy of the people. The way that they conduct themselves, when they just lie over and over. Charlie Chester, you saw those tapes? Well, he says, why isn't it higher? We need to make it higher. We need the death count to be higher on CNN, on Will Blitzer's show, so we get more ratings. That's not journalism, and it's expensive to do investigative reporting. It's hard. It's a lost leader on any company's balance sheet, but we're a non-for-profit organization. I mean, Epic Times, the work you guys are doing are phenomenal. I look at that newspaper, and I think the work you do is amazing, standing up to the Chinese government the way that you do. And I think people have a choice to make. Either they can tell the truth and risk your life, or or run afoul of your conscience, and you need to follow your conscience.
Recently, one of your most recent whistleblowers was Ivory Hecker from a local Fox affiliate. Kind of a interesting situation, but people might not think Fox is compromised. Would you say to some degree they could be?
Well, it was her local TV affiliate, Fox 26, which is not Fox News per se. But Ivory, recorded her boss saying that you can't talk about hydrochloroquine, you can't talk about these things, you can't talk about Bitcoin, you can't report on Bitcoin stories because, to quote that management at that affiliate, African Americans don't care about Bitcoins. That's what they said. So she felt compelled to go public and blow the whistle on what was happening, and more power to her, because I think a lot of people inside network news feel hamstrung. And they work for corporations. And it's this whole tension between having the autonomy to do the stories you want to do and being slaves to your access, to being confined. I think TV stations are not allowing reporters to do the work that they need to do and want to do. So Ivory felt compelled to do something about it.
My last question to you is, how many people come forth to you on a let's say, a weekly basis? And how is it becoming harder for you to
thousands.
do what you... that many?
Some of them have more, powerful stories than others. Some people like David are working for a toy company and they're engineers. He went to RITs. I'm going to go public. Some people are just concerned. They want to do something. But thousands of people at all different levels of society. I think increasingly when people say, what can I do? What they're essentially asking is what Viktor Frankl was saying, a man's search for meaning. They feel like they can't make a difference. People are looking for a solution. Increasingly, the solution is themselves. It's not the senator getting reelected. It's not who gets into office. Because let's face it, politics is essentially broken. Congress isn't going to pass any laws. And over time, we lose more of our freedoms and our rights. So I think we got to look within ourselves. That's the answer to the question.
I noticed at your last Project Veritas party last week that someone from CNN was there, and you immediately went to expose mode. How did that turn out?
Donnie O'Sullivan, who confronts... What he does, he goes to these rallies, he makes people look bad. So what we do is we unveil the curtain at CNN. And by the way, I confronted him. There was a hotel employee he was hiding behind. So what are you, a hypocrite? Answer the question. But he can't answer the questions because Jeff Zucker, the president of CNN, has this cone of silence. You're not allowed to talk. Because if you do, you will run contrary to this veil that you've created at CNN. Donnie Sullivan winced away like a little sniveling coward. And I confronted him. I said, you laughing? You think it's funny, Charlie Chester, what he said? Charlie Chester is still employed by CNN. This guy's talking about fear cells. We need more people to die so ratings can go higher. It's disgraceful. It's disgusting. It's disgusting that they are allowing that to be the case because they're standing behind what Charlie Chester has effectively said. So I confronted Donnie O'Sullivan, one Irishman to another. I said, what do you have to say about this? And he was just smirking and sniveling away like a little coward. I thought that was a really telling moment.
Well, James O'Keefe, thank you for joining me here, and thank you for your passion and your quest for truth.
Thank you,
sir. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on.
I'm joined now by Zach Voorhees. Zach is known as Google Whistleblower. Zach, thank you so much for being here.
Beau, thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. So, Zach, you are the Google Whistleblower. Walk me through this. You were an engineer there, so tell me what happened and how this transpired.
You know what? I was an engineer for 8.5 years at Google. It was a fantastic experience. All the rumors that you heard about Google were absolutely true. But all of that changed in 2016 when Donald Trump won the election. Google had an absolute freak out. And they started...
A meltdown.
a meltdown, and they had a meltdown pretty much on stage. You may have seen the Breitbart video where like some of the Google executives were breaking down on stage.
Yep.
One of the most important questions was asked by one of the employees, which was to the CEO, Sundar Pichai.
Yep.
What was one of the most effective things that Google did during the 2016 election? And his answer really surprised me. What he said was that the use of suppressing fake news with machine learning was one of the most successful things that they did during the 2016 election. And I went, fake news suppression?
Machine learning too.
Machine learning at that. And I was like, wait, when do we use machine learning in order to censor fake news?
So this is the first time you'd ever heard about this even happening. And was it a dedicated department that was doing this that you had no idea about?
At the time, I had no idea other than, you know, the CEO acknowledged that that's what they were doing.
Okay.
And so I started digging because I said, well, if we're filtering the fake news, and there's got to be like a design document and a team that's been allocated for fake news. And I found it because the company's open. And so I could just search the documents. And I found the fake news documents. And as I started looking through the slide presentation, I realized that most of the examples of fake news had to do with Hillary Clinton. And I said, well, that's weird. Is this about the fake news, or is this about supporting a political candidate? In contrary to our mission statement, which is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful.
So explain to me, I think you told me before off camera how they do this, how a machine learns a fake news story. Can you, I think you used maybe a Hillary Clinton and Benghazi example. Can you walk me through that so the layman can understand how they do this?
Yeah, so the way that it works is that they have to get training data. So what happens is that they have a human rater that goes through and looks at a particular news story and then rates it on several scales on like how to classify it. Is it fake news is one of the classifications. Once you have a pile of data, you feed this into a machine learning algorithm. It goes through and it figures out what the patterns are for what fake news is. And then it generates a classifier. That classifier is then run on new inputs, and then it's able to output like this is 50% fake news or 75% fake news.
Okay.
But I want to add something that's very nefarious.
Okay.
What I saw at Google was that they were using technically fake news that was so close to the actual real news that I realized that what they were doing is that they were going to censor the real news as collateral damage on these articles that no one read. It was like these fringe websites that were pushing this like disinfo, and they were using this to train their algorithms in order to censor legitimate news from legitimate sites that, in my opinion, for political purposes.
When do you think this the Google began this algorithmic engineering, and from what top-down principle or philosophy?
I know that they flipped the switch on in 2016 during the election. I also know that they brought in this machine learning fairness from Stanford, and that Stanford had an active program with this in 2014. So between 2014 and 2016, somewhere between there was when Google like brought it in and started kind of, you know, lightly censoring the news.
Tell me also about, people don't realize that re-ranking search results in Google can be such a big deal. Tell us why that is.
Well, look, most people find their search results in the first page, maybe the second page or even third. If something's on the 13th page, it might as well be off the search index completely. And that's the reason why they want to rank it, because it gives them like an out. What they can say is, oh, we're not censoring it because you can still technically find it, but it's in a dark corner on the 13th page and no one's going to be able to find it because it's so far down.
So if you were searching, let's say, Donald Trump insurrection, for instance, you'd see a lot of results on that, but Hillary Clinton Benghazi might not get that type of ranking.
Yeah.
For you to be able to find real information about what happened there.
That's correct. And I also want to add is that the mainstream media figured out how to game this algorithm. And so what they do is that they create articles that don't contain a lot of information, but they contain the keywords that users are using to find the news events that are inconvenient to the narrative.
Okay.
And so they create these dummy articles with these keywords, and then you get rerouted into what they want you to find.
Wow, that is pretty nefarious. Do you think there's any hope to revisit Section 230 of U.S. Code, or do you think Google will maintain its ability to do what it's been doing?
I mean, they're already kind of abandoning it, and they're going to a free speech argument. Facebook's been doing this, and they're like, it's our free speech if we want to say anything. And good luck trying to sue any media company over defamation. It is incredibly hard, and the only one that seems to be able to succeed in this is Project Veritas. And so I think that Section 230 was an opportunity that came and left. I think right now it's up to the states to pass laws that stop this sort of censorship. And let's
DeSantis in Florida, what he's doing.
Like DeSantis. But it's getting so much worse. Like the White House is now fact-checking your SMS messages. Like the Supreme Court needs to step in and put a limit on the federal government and say what they're doing is a blatant violation of the First Amendment. And I think that that's really what's going to be the next fight in the next 6 months to 2 years.
Are you optimistic it'll go well for those like yourself seeking transparency and a limit on this overreach?
If it doesn't, then I think that we're going to get into a very destabilizing crisis. And we're in for some very major pain because Google's now censoring your Google Docs if you talk about vaccine misinformation or election misinformation.
It's seeing that.
So at this point, it seems like they're going for a coup. It's not about facts or not facts. It's more about a position of power that they're enforcing on their tech monopoly that's going out. And it's not just Google; it's also Apple with their App Store.
Yep.
And we're in a really bad situation.
If there's one thing you could tell the American people about working at Google, what would it be?
Google is being controlled by the same network that's controlling the mainstream media. They're very evil now. They've gotten very secretive post my leak. And so wear a wire. Record them. That's what they fear the most. And if they do record them, know that Project Veritas has your back. They will get the message out to the public. I did it. It was the best thing I've ever done. And now my conscience is clear because now I'm no longer responsible for contributing to the beast that is Google and this network that's taking over America right now.
So what are you going to do with all this information? I understand. I think you've got a book coming out. Is that correct? Tell me a little bit about what this next chapter is going to be like for you.
Yeah, so I've got a new book. It's called Google Leaks. You can find it in Amazon for pre-order right now. They'll probably ban it, just like...
That's what I'm wondering. Will Google even show the result for your book?
I don't know. Google is suppressing everything related to this bad news. Wikipedia doesn't even have an article about me, I don't even exist. But right now, you can find my book, Google Leaks, in the Amazon store. We want to make it number one. We'll see what happens with the censorship, but it goes into detail about how exactly I went through, was able to blow the whistle on Google, how I was able to obtain all the information and be able to deliver it to the public. Google tried to stop me. They sent police, FBI, bomb squad to my house for a wellness check, and luckily we got it on video. And so I recount that experience, what happened, the inside story. When I go and talk on, podcasts, there's only so much I can say. We get all of it on a book, and it's amazing. And I recommend that if you want to know how I did it, get a template for how to blow the whistle, check it out. Google Leaks on Amazon.com today.
So is that kind of the plan then? Is that what you recommend people do? Is everyone going to have to employ this Project Veritas style undercover stuff to bust these people?
Yeah, it's a trend. It's huge. I thought that I was just doing this myself, but it turns out that I was part of a larger trend of whistleblowers coming out and blowing the whistle on these big tech companies and exposing them. And every single time that this happens, what you see is a radical change within the company because they have to now be secretive, right? They're open with it, and that allows them to operate efficiently. But once they get exposed, and they got to get secretive. And once they get secretive, then people have this understanding that what they're doing might not be right. And so if people really want to make a change, they got to expose the bad stuff. It's scary, when you think about it.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, once you do it, it's actually not that scary. They don't actually do anything. They just sort of ignore it and continue on and then change. So if you see evil, blow the whistle, it's greener on the other side.
Zach Voorhees, the Google whistleblower. Thanks so much for joining me today,
Thank
sir.
you very much,
Appreciate
Beau.
it. Thanks
Yeah.
for your time. My guest is David Johnson. David was just unveiled yesterday by James O'Keefe and Project Veritas as their newest whistleblower with some very explosive information. David, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
David, can you just walk me through this in terms of how you came to Project Veritas and what transpired?
So, sure. As you know, I'm an engineer at Hasbro. Hasbro is one of the largest toy manufacturers, I want to say in the entire North America, but it might even be the Western world. But they make toys for like preschool up until maybe like 8, 10, 12. Like they're a big company. One day I saw that I had a CRT and critical race theory and racial bias training in my inbox at work.
Okay.
And my first thought was, I'm going to record this because I've seen critical race theory and intersectionality in different parts of our institutions across the country. So I've been paying attention to it for a little bit. So I just thought I should record it just in case.
Yeah.
I didn't originally think it was going to turn into anything big, but it turned out to be a lot worse than I was expecting. So that's when I decided that I had to send it off to let somebody know, and Veritas is that group.
And, you know, David, you obviously were aware ahead of time kind of what CRT, critical race theory, is. How insidious is it in terms of the way it's infiltrating Hasbro, as you see it?
The way I see it right now, it seems like it's just in the early stages at Hasbro. Company they're contracting with, The Conscious Kid, is trying to use Hasbro to push CRT through every level, through product design, marketing, packaging.
Okay.
So I think that's the goal of The Conscious Kid. It doesn't seem like they're too into Hasbro yet, but
so it's in formative stages. We've seen like Nickelodeon put themselves completely out there with transgender indoctrination. I'm just wondering, as you see it as an engineer, you're seeing them partner with a third-party company that's trying to inject this, and so you see the rudiments of it already starting to happen at Hasbro.
Yeah.
And this could manifest itself in the way of the way they create toys, how the toys appear to the kids, and a way that they would teach them. Correct?
Yes.
Have you received, since your unveiling yesterday, have you received any word from Hasbro, and do you expect to lose your job?
I expect to lose my job. I wasn't able to log into work this morning, and I tried to reach out, but no one's gotten back to me yet. So we'll see what happens there.
And James reached out to Hasbro for comment. My understanding is that someone there wanted to either add to your story or to contribute more whistleblower-type content. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'm not sure who it is myself, but someone else within Hasbro did reach out to Veritas to say that they also oppose critical race theory being pushed through Hasbro. So it's good that more people are speaking out against it.
And you have not been able to log into your work email as of this morning?
That's true.
So what was it? I know it takes a lot of courage to do this, but I think I heard you say yesterday you didn't think this was what MLK intended. So can you kind of go into like the courage it took for you to do this and the why for you?
So for me, I've always been a big fan of Dr. Martin Luther King. I think his dream was a noble dream for America. And when I see critical race theory, when I see people who follow intersectionality going around telling people what they can and can't do because of their race or because of their gender or skin color, it's really upsetting. That's not what I feel people in the civil rights era sacrificed and fought for. So I just felt that I had to say something to just kind of hold true to those values.
I don't know if anyone's asked you this, but I feel like I have to cut to the chase to another elephant in the room. Is you're a black man, and you're against CRT. So what kind of position does that put Hasbro in? Did they fire you for the color of your skin or for the content of your character?
I think at that point it would be they're firing me because I oppose what they're trying to do, but I haven't officially been given a pink slip yet, so we'll see what happens. But I don't think me being black has anything to do with me opposing CRT, because CRT is just racism pretending to be polite. So I think everyone should oppose critical race theory, critical gender theory. It's just going to reintroduce racism and discrimination into America.
If you are allowed to stay at Hasbro, do you expect to continue doing your job the best way you can, or would you rather move on to another venture where you're not going to see this type of indoctrination?
If I were to stay at Hasbro, that would be nice. I would like to see some kind of, I guess, official statement to know that I'm not going to be contributing to pushing CRT, if I'm not aware of it. but I'd also be open to just working somewhere else that I know is founded on like American principles that are not going to be pushing that kind of indoctrination.
It seems like the smart thing for Hasbro to do at this moment would be to invite you to be on some sort of contributory panel for diversity inclusion, would it not? And to invite your ideas to the table?
I guess. I don't want to be on a panel for diversity and inclusion. Those words are so loaded now.
I know.
So I don't know.
So you hope to continue doing your job, but you just don't want to see this type of thing in your company. You want it to be based on American values.
Ideally, yes.
Well, David, thank you so much for your time, your courage in working with Project Veritas, and we wish you the best, whatever venture if you stay or if you go somewhere else.
Thank you so much.
David.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir.
On the topic of Cuba, which is very, very hot right now, I met a young man named Jonathan Coppell. Jonathan used Instagram to raise awareness about Cuba as people began reaching out to him with information about U.S. citizens still in Cuba, many of whom can't get out or who can't relay information back to the States. He's getting an insider's view of what's happening there as communications have been sparse and restricted by the communist regime. Have a look.
My guest right now is Jonathan Coppell. Jonathan is here at Turning Point USA's Student Action Summit. Jonathan, thank you for being here with me today.
Thanks, man.
Jonathan, you approached me about a breaking story that you have, and I want to get into that. But before I do that, tell me why you decided to come to the Turning Point USA Student Action Summit.
Yeah, so I'm actually involved with Turning Point USA. I'm a chapter president in St. Tammany Parish. I've spearheaded a chapter and kind of wanted to get involved and spread conservative values, tell people about constitutional freedoms, and help make people aware of our rights as U.S. citizens that a lot of people just don't know. I noticed there's a lot of infringement upon First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, and so I started getting involved in politics during the whole COVID lockdown situations. And I got to attend one of these events, the last one they had. It was my first Student Action Summit. And I got informed about conservative values and what's going on in politics and how there's some people that want to really just rip away our freedoms, and I wanted to help fight against it. And so that's why I'm here this time as well, to get more information, to network, and it just so happened that I'm working on something else while I'm here.
So you had planned to come here, and then, I'm seeing a lot of the students that are here, there's a lot of enthusiasm, there's a lot of energy, and they're starting to apply some very interesting and I would say sharp journalistic tactics, shall we say.
Yeah.
So you have acquired a list of U.S. citizens that are in Cuba. And Cuba's obviously in the news right now because of the oppression that their citizens are facing under the communist regime. How and when did you acquire this list of U.S. citizens there?
So I want to say a day or two ago, I made a video on my Instagram profile, it went viral because I'm a school teacher. The reason I'm a student is because I just finished graduate school, literally just finished it. But I started using my platform to help share information about Cuba. And I made a video saying, I think the United States has an obligation to protect U.S. citizens if they're in danger, if they're in another country. I'm pretty sure the U.S. has an obligation to help, especially if we have such a large number. And I made a video calling on people to send me, if they have family members that were visiting Cuba, got stuck, just whatever it is, as long as they're a U.S. citizen, send it to me. And I didn't really have a lot of organization to it. That was literally it. People started sending me messages. A lot of people shared the video. It's got over 100,000 views. It was a reel. I don't know how many views it's got right now, but it's still getting shared. I'm still getting a few names. I updated my tactic to a form that can be filled out. That's in English and Spanish to make it a little more organized. Now I'm collecting phone numbers and I'm getting contact info. And I think it's been 2 days that I've been collecting these names.
And how many names do you have now?
29 or 30. And 3 of them are permanent residents and the rest are all citizens.
Are these people that are in Cuba have reached out to you? Have you spoken with any of them?
So not the people in Cuba, because them being able to communicate is like a hit or miss.
Yeah.
Some can, some can't. And some have, I just heard from one family, they said they just heard from their dad that he's okay, he's in a different part of the country, but for a whole week, nobody's been able to talk to anybody in Cuba. And if they have, it's been very risky. They've been doing it through VPNs, so more of the younger generation's been kind of communicating and using the VPNs, and that's how the videos are getting out. But even then, the government's constantly shutting all that down.
Yeah, we obviously know that, and they also use Chinese technology as well.
Which is scary because I get reports from people, and then it's like me and some other Cubans and some influencers are sharing what we're getting from Cuba and just blasting it. We got people that are telling us their messages are being shared with the Cuban regime. So how is it that Cuba's able to see Instagram messages and WhatsApp messages? It's really scary. It's like really scary.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's the communist regime there. What do you hope to achieve with this list?
I'm hoping that it puts a burden on United States elected officials, because, you know, I really believe the Cubans are suffering. The videos are out there. There's no doubt about it. There's torture happening. They got abuelitas, which are grandmas, talking about how their nephews and grandchildren and sons have been tortured, eyes pulled out, teeth pulled out. We need to help them. We have to. But I'm thinking maybe the U.S. can't turn a blind eye if now they find out that we have United States citizens in Cuba.
I think you told me that some other outlets have reached out to you about
Correct.
this. Who's reached out?
So Telemundo, a reporter from Telemundo reached out to me, and I've been talking with her since yesterday.
So this is obviously a story. I mean,
It's
you're
a
being
big deal.
conduit now, exactly, and you're a young guy doing this. What motivated you to do this? Do you have your heart with the Cuban people? Do you want to see more democracy spread, obviously, there? Is that what you'd like to see?
So I'm an advocate for freedom. Yes, I stand with the Cuban people, but I think it was 2 years ago, I went there. I spent time with the family. I didn't stay at a hotel. These are people that I've actually helped get travel visas to come visit the United States and go back. The dad, he's a pastor. He has a little church there. And I've seen how communism affected that family. And I remember being with those kids, his daughters. They got little girls, little young girls. And I'm thinking, these kids deserve freedom, and somebody's got to be a voice. And though I'm not a Cuban person, I don't have family in Cuba per se, but those people, they are my family.
Have you been able to reach out to people who are passionate about this, like Senator Rubio or Senator Cruz?
Yes, actually. So Senator Rubio's office in Orlando and Miami reached out to me.
Okay.
Again, this is all through social media.
Yeah.
Also, the communist regime is reaching out to me too, so I have to vet. I'm not sharing this list with a lot of people because I have to vet, make sure, because if the Cubans find out they have Americans, who knows, are they going to leverage that?
Yeah.
Because maybe those Americans are keeping it a secret that they're U.S. citizens. But his Orlando and Miami office reached out to me.
So you do have the communist regime in Cuba reaching out to you as well?
Oh yeah, I got message. Why
What are
else?
they saying?
They say, hey, thank you for your work. We really need that list of American citizens in Cuba. I got tons and tons of messages.
So they
like
might
that.
try to dox it and hold that against.
Exactly.
Use it as leverage.
Yep, and I don't want to do that.
Wow, that's terrible. Why do you think it is, Jonathan, that, we're at TPUSA, it's a conservative action summit really for young conservatives. Why do you think the Democratic Party and Democratic legislators are not taking as much of a proactive role on this topic?
That's such a great question. That's another reason I'm so on this whole Cuba issue. They're pushing critical race theory and cultural Marxism in schools right now. The reason the Cubans are revolting is because they've been oppressed by Marxism, by communism. All the things that we're hearing about in critical race theory have been applied in Cuba, but not from a color stance, because Cubans come in all shapes and sizes. You could look like a Cuban. I could look like a Cuban. They don't have, there's not like a color to define them.
Right.
Half of the island's black. So it doesn't look good for Black Lives Matter. It doesn't look good for AOC because they've been promoting these socialist ideas. They've been promoting communism. Black Lives Matter said Fidel Castro rest in power. That tweet is all over the internet and making people's heads spin because people are just realizing that this is real communism and this is what it does to people. And that's why the Cubans are in trouble, because they're fighting back.
How did you feel about Black Lives Matter saying that the United States was the reason for the Cuban people's persecution?
Well, I already knew they are full of lies, but then this was just an easy... They messed up by saying that, because now what happened was a lot of Black Lives Matter supporters have now said, wait a minute, I don't think that's the truth, because the Cubans are actually saying one thing and you're saying another thing.
Yeah.
I thought they were just totally stupid for saying that, but obviously they're going to push the propaganda, because even the White House said at first this was about COVID vaccines. How do I have more intel than the White House? You think that's even possible, that me, just a regular Joe Blow, can have more intel than the White House?
Is there any thought to reaching out to the Biden administration?
But that's what I'm doing with this. I don't have a direct line to them, but if you put something on the internet and you reach out to reporters and a story gets out, it's kind of pressing, because now it makes them look bad.
Hey, Jonathan, my last question. How can people find this post for you so they can reach out to you too if there's other people out there that have relatives that are there?
Yeah, and there probably is.
Yeah.
So they can go to at Jonathan Coppell on Instagram.
Spell it for him.
Use the little at symbol, and then Jonathan, Jonathhan, Coppell, Koeppel, and there's a link in my bio. You fill out the form, the link in my bio, you fill it out. It's in English and Spanish. So if you know somebody that doesn't speak English, they can still fill out the form.
Perfect. Jonathan, thank you so much for your time today in this very interesting form of journalism that you've kind of fallen into, but I think hopefully it will help promote the cause of the Cuban people, and I think we know what your motivation and where your heart is on this. Thanks so much, Jonathan.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Finally, I interviewed the CEO of the Babylon Bee, Seth Dillon. If you've never heard of the Babylon Bee, it's a satire site that is similar to The Onion. It started out as a Christian satire site and then filled a void in the conservative entertainment sphere, but in a very creative way. I had a lot of fun with Seth and discussed some of my favorite Babylon Bee articles.
I'm joined today by Seth Dillon. He's the CEO of the Babylon Bee. Seth, thank you so much for joining me today on NTD.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Seth, you are the CEO of this Babylon Bee, which I think started out as a Christian satire site, correct? How did that come about?
Yeah. Well, we're still a Christian satire site. We're just, we're dealing with a broader range of topics these days, being just steeped in the news cycle. But how it came about, how it started?
Yeah.
Our founder, Adam Ford, just saw that there was this massive void for conservative Christian comedy that wasn't cheesy, that actually dealt with real issues and did it in an impactful way rather than a way that made us the joke.
Right.
And so he launched this site feeling like he had the ability to do satire similar to how The Onion was doing satire, but just from another worldview.
Yeah.
And turns out he was right. Obviously, he's very talented. But right out the gate, he launched the site, and within a matter of a couple of months, he was already doing millions of page views. So he was clearly tapping into something. There was a huge demand there for that type of humor. And we've managed to find some extremely talented people to add to the team to help us grow from there. So we're often described as a right-leaning version of The Onion.
Right.
Sometimes we're described as a far-right misinformation site, as the New York Times put it.
I want to get into that in a bit.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we can get into that, but I think it's an apt description to say that we're a right-leaning satire site. It's where we are that other side of The Onion. Yeah.
And that's actually what I wanted to go into next. So, because satire, it's so important, because it brings about truth in a funny way.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that conservatives, the right, has missed this opportunity. There's been a huge void in this. Why can't there be a right-leaning version of SNL, for instance? Colbert, Myers, they're all left-leaning. So you're saying your founder saw this void. Why are we not seeing more of that type of content? Because it's brilliant that market was recognized. Why don't we see more of that? Why don't conservatives use that type of entertainment more?
It's a good question. I think that what we've shown is that there is the demand for it. So it would be nice to see, a lot of people rushing to fill in those gaps and do that. I'd love to see that. A lot of people ask me if I find that threatening, that there might be other conservatives getting into comedy, and absolutely not. But I do think that the left is creating an environment right now where it's almost inevitable that that's going to happen, because the people who are willing to tell the jokes that you're not allowed to tell anymore, the ones that will get you canceled, those are going to be, it's going to be conservative thought coming through in comedy, right? It's going to be recognizing that 2 and 2 really is 4, and that men really are men and women really are women, and things that you're not allowed to say.
Right.
Those types of jokes, that type of humor, people are going to be really hungry for that, because they're not getting jokes about reality anymore. Everyone's tiptoeing and dancing around these issues. So the left has really put a muzzle on comedians.
Yes.
And I think the right has a huge opportunity to step in and take advantage of that.
So in a way, the Bee is almost uncancelable. In a way, you've created this demand for something that people feel like they can't say because they would be canceled on social media, so they come to you for that outlet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we are cancelable in the sense that at any time Twitter could suspend us, or Facebook.
Which they tried to, correct?
Yeah, they have. They suspended us and reversed it. MailChimp has suspended us and reversed it. Facebook has suspended us and reversed it.
Yep.
So we've been through all that multiple times. None of it's stuck yet. Up to this point, their attempts to suppress our content or silence our voice have amplified it. But there's always, the possibility that, like what happened with Trump, permanent ban, you're never coming back, there's no appeal, that kind of stuff. That could happen. And does it mean that we're done? I don't think so. I think that it will generate a lot of support in the event that does happen. But ultimately, there's going to need to be pushback on the way that these social networks enforce their terms so unevenly, and it ends up affecting people like us more. But I wouldn't say we're totally uncancelable, but you can help make us uncancelable by subscribing to our site. That helps.
And the New York Times has labeled the Bee as misinformation. Is that correct?
The New York Times has described us as a far-right misinformation site that traffics in misinformation under the guise of satire. So It's this ridiculous attempt to suggest that, they're reading our hearts and minds, right? They're getting inside our heads and saying, oh, these guys aren't really trying to be funny. These people are trying to mislead the masses. And their whole point is to write these stories that are like kind of believable so that people will share it, but it's not really true, but it hurts whoever the target is. And the interesting thing about that kind of twist is, well, there's a couple things. For one thing, they never do that to their own. Like the Onion's never accused of that, even though people believe the Onion stories all the time. But when someone believes that a satirical story is true, that means it's good satire. It has to be believable. If the rule for satire is it has to be so divorced from reality that no one could possibly believe it, well, those jokes aren't going to land. They're not going to be funny because, the saying, it's funny because it's true, or there's a grain of truth in every joke. Those sayings are there for a reason. It's because things aren't funny unless they're attached to reality. So when we make a joke that's believable by a lot of people, that's actually an indictment of whoever we're satirizing. It's not an indictment of satire.
It's interesting. When I was watching Jon Stewart on Colbert recently, I don't know if you happened to see that, where they were talking about the virus, and Stewart was using his own brand of comedy, but saying this virus was manipulated. It was created in the Wuhan lab. And you could see that Colbert went into, oh gosh, I've got to find a way to spin this and hurt the right.
Right.
He went into this protect mode. Right. It was amazing to me that someone like Stewart, who we know is no right of center guy, was saying pretty boldly, this did not come from what we think it came from. Right. How did that land on you? Because it's like almost the left was having to attack the left. They were eating their own at that point.
Right. Well, you've seen Bill Maher come out a lot of times recently, too, and say things that, he's not supposed to say, and address issues that, he's not supposed to have those opinions on those issues. And he's holding his own side to a standard of reasonableness and trying to say, hey, look, we can't go so far off the reservation that we are the conspiracy theorists that we're attacking, because they're all about truth and reality and science, right? And attacking crazy right-wing nut jobs. But some of them are starting to see, and it's the comedians, Jon Stewart, Bill Maher, they're starting to see that people on their own side are becoming like that themselves.
Right.
And they're calling them out on their BS.
Yeah.
And I think it's very refreshing. I think it's great to see. I'd love to meet these guys and talk to them and interview them and connect with them. It'd be a lot of fun, but I don't know that they'll ever do that. But I'm fans of people who are willing to, and we do this too, engage in some self-deprecating humor, some introspection, say, are we okay with some of the things that we believe and some of the talking points that we're regurgitating over and over again?
Right.
We challenge ourselves like that all the time.
What's the message to the kids here at TPUSA? What will you be saying to them tomorrow?
I'm going to be talking a lot about the project of satire, the importance of humor as a vehicle for truth delivery and how effective that is, and the importance of, as negative as it sounds, ridiculing bad ideas. Ridicule bad ideas. And this is an important topic talking with young people because young people, this is where the left is trying to get in with it. There was just, I think James O'Keefe did a whistleblower thing yesterday about Hasbro and how they're trying to get critical race theory into their toys and educate children as young as 3 years old and not educate them, miseducate them and brainwash them at an early age. Bad ideas are taking hold in young people's minds at earlier and earlier ages, and it's very deliberate. It's a calculated strategy. It's coming from the top down in every area. We're often accused of punching down, which is, aiming at the wrong targets beneath us. I can't describe what we do any more clearly than punching up. I mean, this is all coming from the top down. It's the most powerful people, celebrities, corporations, politicians, who are forcing this kind of stuff on our families and on our kids. So, pushing back on that and being in a defensive posture and punching back, not down, is an important thing that we need to start doing. So,
do you think there's any chance the Babylon Bee can be given press access at the White House?
I actually talked to someone in the White House at one point, and he joked about doing that.
Yeah.
And he was kind of half serious, like we should try to sneak you in there and get you in there with press credentials. I don't think that would fly, but not in Biden's White House anyway. In Trump's White House, you might actually let that happen.
And what's more truthful, Babylon Bee or CNN at this point?
Babylon Bee for sure. We're fake news you can trust.
That's right. Okay, so some of my more favorite posts that you've had recently are, and we'll put these up on the screen. Other states look to Texas for advice on how to get Democrats to leave.
Yeah.
That was a great one. I think the Chinese audience will appreciate this too. President Xi getting pretty jealous of Biden administration's ability to censor speech on social media. That one was classic. All these guys love that here. And this is a more Christian angle. McDonald's employee who said, "My pleasure," under fire for appropriating Chick-fil-A culture.
There you go.
I love that one because everybody knows at Chick-fil-A they say "my pleasure."
Yeah.
And then finally, popular new ejection porch automatically launches vaccine evangelist into the stratosphere.
I wish I had that.
I think we all do. Where do these ideas come from? You must have a brain trust of some great people working for you.
I'd love to say that I generate all of them with like artificial intelligence because that would be very affordable. You know, just having like a computer program that spits out funny ideas.
It's too creative for that.
It's too creative for that. AI does not get satire. So we have a talented team. It's a small team, but we have a talented team of people. Kyle Mann is our editor-in-chief. And our founder, Adam Ford, has described him as an idea fire hose, and I think that's a good description of him. This guy, he can sit down at his computer and just punch out one idea after another every day, and his mind just goes there when he reads the real news headlines. You know, we get up in the morning and we check the news, we read through what's going on in the world, and then we start communicating with each other and chatting back and forth on, you know, which stories we want to try to riff on, and then we'll start tossing ideas out about how we get what angle to come up with. And some people's minds just go there naturally. Like, what's the funny angle on this? What way could we exaggerate this story just a bit to draw out the absurdity and the hypocrisy? And we have some people who are very good at that. So we have a lot of fun just kind of chatting back and forth and throwing around ideas. The joke is in the headline, so we always start with the headline. You were just reading headlines. There's whole articles too.
I know.
But you don't even need the article. The headline paired with the image that we like Photoshop in there, that's the joke.
Just on Instagram alone, I know that how many people watching this probably do that. It just catches your eye right away.
Yeah.
And I'm looking to laugh before I'm even there because I know I'm going to be fed something great.
Right.
And it's interesting because with the Trump White House, especially Trump Jr., fan of memes, fan of a lot of comedy, I think we are seeing a resurgence of this on the right. My final question, you not serious at all. Would you rather go to, you have these choices, the French Laundry with Gavin Newsom, ice cream with Joe Biden, or a Turkish bathhouse with Hunter Biden?
Oh my God.
Those are your three options.
Those are my options. You know, I have always wanted to try the French Laundry. That sounds like a good place. It's
with
like
Gavin,
everyone, everyone,
Mask or maskless?
but with Gavin. With Gavin. If he's there, definitely I'm going maskless.
You might get free $600 if you go.
Yeah,
that's what he's offering people in California.
Yeah, I will say though, ice cream with Joe Biden could be interesting because
be
I'd love to stump him with some tough questions while he's eating vanilla ice cream and expecting me to ask him how he enjoys the flavor. That could be a lot of fun.
Ask about Cuba policy while
exactly. Ask about Cuba policy, ask about China, ask about all kinds of difficult stuff that he doesn't want to dig into, and watch him fumble and bumble and sputter on his ice cream.
Because he always gets the softball questions.
Yeah,
Sir, what's your favorite flavor? That's all he gets.
I know. It's so stupid. It's so stupid.
Well, Seth, Dillon, thank you so much for joining me and taking some time for NTD and the Beau Show today. We appreciate what you're doing. It's hilarious. It's creative. It's genius. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Seth.
Yep.